Board. All right, I'm going to start the webinar here. Some folks are probably going to filter in, and I'm going to turn on all the live feeds. Okay. Hi, everybody. It looks like we got some people coming into the room. Nice to see you all for yet another Procurement Foundry session on topics and technology, sponsored by the lovely folks at NPI. Kim is with us again today. This is our series on topical series on topics in technology. Topics in technology for us is once a month, right, Kim? We do this on average about once a month. We do some type of breakout session because, as we all know, we've got about 1,500 IT and technology sourcing professionals inside of Procurement Foundry, by far our single largest demographic associated with Procurement Foundry. So because of that, we try to do breakout custom content specifically around technology. That said, we've got an amazing panel for you today. Some of the brightest minds in technology related sourcing. Thank you all so much for your time today. I am not going to stay on and bore you with this, but just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have some folks in the audience here inside of the Zoom room, or what I call the live studio audience. And then we're also broadcasting out live on LinkedIn Live, and Tina is in the background, always monitoring LinkedIn Live because she doesn't sleep. Tina, are we live on LinkedIn right now?
We are. We already got people making comments.
Awesome. Okay, great. So Tina's this is how it's gonna work. Tina is gonna monitor LinkedIn Live. If you have questions for the panel, she will take that and put it into the Zoom room, and we will try to get those questions out for you. We love for this to be interactive, as always. And with some of the panelists that are on this panel, I know this is going to be interactive. All right, well, listen, Kim, thank you once again for your sponsorship and your participation in the Procurement Foundry with the NPI. NPI, for those of you who don't know, is a permanent residence partner of Procurement Foundry. You will see them on newsletters, blog posts. You'll see them at our conferences. They have a channel inside of the Procurement Foundry where you can go and interact with them. So please, by all means, if you have questions for NPI and Kim and the team, please feel free to reach out to them. Those are the folks who help us keep Procurement Foundry alive and well and free for all of our members. All right, I'm going to step into the background. You all have a wonderful day, and I will try to keep an eye on time as well as questions.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. I'm Kim Addington. I'm moderator of our panel discussion today. I'm Chief Operating Officer of NPI, and I've been working in the enterprise IT sector for 40 years now. Can't believe that, but we're an Atlanta-based procurement advisory company that helps large enterprises get the best deal on their IT and telecom purchases. The cornerstone of our services is price benchmark analysis to see how your quotes stack up against peer purchases in the market. We analyzed over $11 billion in enterprise IT spend for our clients last year. 86% of those transactions showed material opportunity for price improvement. And we also provide license optimization advice and negotiation intel that helps our clients cut costs. So that's kind of our chops in this arena. Every large enterprise on the planet is buying cloud-based technologies at a dizzying pace these days. And today we're going to talk about one very specific subcategory, which is cloud platform resources from suppliers like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. So let's get to know our panelists because they're the stars of the show. Brad, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience in the cloud platform category, and the primary cloud platforms you use at Walmart?
Sure. Brad Beach. I'm in charge of global software procurement for Walmart. Background, I mean, I've been doing this for over 20 years, so I've seen this area mature from the very beginning. Back, when there was a lot of security concerns and everybody was convinced that we were going to, put our stuff out in the cloud and it was all going to be exposed. So, it's come a long way. The technology's really amazing. Our two main platforms are that I'm most familiar with, I guess I should say, in this life and previous lives that I've had are with the Google GCP and Microsoft Azure. I don't do much with AWS, and I'm here to learn just like everybody else, mostly from Matt, I think, in that area. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am Sarah Francis, and I'm a category IT sourcing manager for Allegis Group. So maybe the smallest company that's represented today, but still a pretty large footprint in the cloud. So I've been in procurement now for just shy of 20 years. I love it. I have been purchasing IT along the way, but this is probably the first position I've had that is very IT focused and managing the cloud. So I joined Allegis back in August during COVID, August of 2020. We use Azure as our largest cloud provider, and then right behind that, GCP. We use some Oracle, OCI, and then we have a small footprint in AWS as well, very similar to Brad. So really Azure and GCP have been our primary focus. IT procurement is very interesting to me because I can look back just 15 years when I was purchasing server licenses and window licenses and all of that sort of thing, and had the shelves full of the boxes the software came in and the asset management that came behind those purchases. So it's really interesting to see how this has evolved and will continue to evolve.
Thanks very much. How about you, Pavel?
Yes, hi Kim, and hi everyone. I'm Pavel Vidor. I'm IT Infrastructure Category Manager at MassMutual. We are headquartered in Springfield, Mass. I've been with MassMutual for 25 years in actually various roles, IT roles and procurement roles. Started specifically in personal productivity space, moved on to IT infrastructure, hardware, servers, and storage for about 20 years and so, until I moved to procurement in the supplier management role, managing various key suppliers, the likes of Microsoft, VMware's, and others, helping with negotiating enterprise agreements and so on. Most recently, we've been undertaking a pretty significant procurement transformation initiative, and as a result, one of the new functions that was established was category management. So that is a new role I'm in, as again IT infrastructure category manager, focused on cloud, telecom, and hardware. So definitely number of experience in various IT roles, IT infrastructure roles that can help me bring both the IT capabilities and experience, and then procurement kind of insights in the new category management role. So looking forward to being on this panel and also learning as well. You know, our primary cloud platform is AWS, although we do have a multi-cloud strategy, but it's been mostly AWS and some of the Azure. Definitely looking at other capabilities like the Google, but AWS is what we use the most.
Great, thank you very much. And then finally, my colleague Matt from NPI, tell us a little bit about yourself and the primary cloud platforms you're seeing as you work with clients.
Good morning, Kim. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us. Glad to be here. I'm Matt West. I've got over 35 years of experience in IT enterprise. A large part of that has been in telecommunications and network infrastructure in the early days. I've now been with MPI for 11 years and had the opportunity to look at my first AWS deal about 10 years ago. And at the time was probably seeing maybe only one AWS deal every few months, and it has now grown, as everybody would expect, in the rapid digital transformation of moving to cloud. It's grown to where we see at least 4 AWS deals every month, and proportionally a similar or relative number of GCP and Azure deals. So currently run the cloud services practice at MPI, and have lots and lots of data points on those. And I think, you know, to answer your question, Kim, that, you know, that is the level we're seeing still largely AWS as the biggest volume of transactions we see, followed by Azure and then GCP. you know, a lot of the Azure stuff comes in as a part of EAs with Microsoft, so we may not quite get quite the visibility to those because they are, you know, as frequent as at AWS, I believe, but we're not seeing quite as many of those as we do AWS, which seems to be more of a standalone transaction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So in preparation for today's session, we had a meeting and we've been exchanging ideas by email about what we think that you might be interested in. So I've got a couple cheat sheets here that I'll reference just to kind of traverse a variety of topics. And then we'll also be influenced by what we see in the chat and in the questions that come in from our audience. So let's start with Brad. Where does procurement fit in the cloud buying process in large enterprises from your experience? And how is it the same as or different from other IT subcategories as you reflect on that?
Yeah, it's the pretty similar. I mean, as a procurement person, we always want to be brought in early, right? And earlier and earlier and earlier. And in IT, that just typically isn't the case, especially in the software and the cloud area. It's too easy for our end users to go out and test things and pull things down the internet and, you know, meet people at shows and get demos and do all this type of stuff, to where, you know, procurement becomes an afterthought almost. It may even be a little bit worse in the cloud platform area, because it's so easy to go spin things up and, you know, start a new environment and test things out there. That's probably the biggest downfall that I see, because we're horrible at spinning down. We're great at starting new projects and spinning things up and testing things, but, you know, to go shut something down or turn it off and things like that, it's a problem. I'm getting into the IT side of it, but, you know, they always come calling to us when there's a problem, then when they're over capacity and things like that. So I'm afraid that it may be even a little bit worse than the traditional sourcing gets pulled in late model.
Yeah, that's something you mentioned when we talked the other day. You said on the flip side that the good news is that at least the suppliers you're using, they give you some better tools to manage that after the fact than you have in other categories of, you know, software as a service, for example.
Yeah. I mean, not obviously, but they do have an amazing tool set to manage your portfolio of solutions and to make it truly a consumption-based license, right? But you're responsible for managing that consumption. Unlike the traditional SaaS solution, where you immediately have shelfware because they try and force you to pay for everything up front. So you have to have the people managing the environment to really, you know, create and generate the consumption-based model that everybody proclaims they have.
Yeah. Sarah, what's it like in your experience? How is it the same as other kinds of IT procurement or different?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar in our organization. You know, cloud and software are, you know, have a very similar kind of life cycle with procurement. You know, at Allegis, we are a very collaborative organization. So, you know, there's a lot of collaboration between IT, procurement, and our finance department is very involved as well. Somebody has to be really watching and managing that spend and asking the questions. So you have to have the right people involved. And I think that's building relationships. It is, you know, trying to get in front of things, having regular meetings with your stakeholders, trying to understand what's important to leadership, what's on the roadmap. And it doesn't just come to you. You have to go out and seek that. So that would be my best advice, is to build those relationships and show how you can be an asset, because procurement can come off like we're the stumbling block and like we're going to hold things up and like it's going to take 6 months to get a contract. So that's my best advice.
Okay. Pavel, you raised an interesting topic when we were talking, but one way that your organization is overcoming this last to the party phenomenon is by creating, this is my words, not yours, kind of a group steering committee where there's kind of ongoing communication about the cloud migration strategy and kind of keeps everybody in the loop and gives procurement and others an opportunity to be part of the conversation earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about your organizational approach and how it's helping?
Sure, yes. So similarly to Sarah and Brad, right? Being brought in late is always a challenge. It's been a challenge to ask within procurement as well. But recently, we've established more of a formal cadence and partnerships with our cloud and DevOps organization. So we actually have a cadence in meetings where we do connect and discuss the immediate needs as well, both immediate needs as well as the long-term planning that these teams are working with or facing, any challenges that they're facing with. So that helps us really understand their needs. And it's not only about what's coming up for renewal and planning ahead, but also understanding some challenges that they might have. So examples could be, they might be having challenges with optimizing their cloud performance. From our perspective, we can maybe bring in partners that we know are good in this space and that perhaps the team isn't aware of. We're able to kind of bring an entire supplier perspective from an enterprise as opposed to just looking at a single topic. So being able to leverage capabilities and leverage our value, with the overall partnership that we have with a particular supplier and bring it over to our cloud team helps us kind of plan ahead, helps us be part of solving their solution and building a strategy together. So it's definitely worked for us to avoid those last minute deals of last minute events and be more proactive and add value.
Is this a relatively new addition to the mix?
It's certainly a new addition to the mix. It's similarly part of the category management function and official head of cloud strategy function as well. Within IT organization, we were able to come together as partners and bring in a few folks that we can meet regularly and able to address any immediate needs as well as long term. So it's fairly new, but it's been working. We're working well. It helped us look at executing maybe RFI events. We're able to learn about capabilities and address the needs that the team might have, whether it's again short-term or long-term planning. So it's definitely working for us.
What's for this particular purpose? What are the edges around cloud strategy? Does it stretch as far as SaaS, or is it really specific platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, kind of more data center oriented view?
It's the entire footprint. So it's both software as a service platform and entire ecosystem. So part of it's not only in my role as an IT infrastructure category manager, part of the collaboration group, it's also my teammate with an IT software category. So we're all coming in together, having those conversations and helping address the needs that our stakeholders have.
Yeah, Brad, does Walmart have a similar approach?
Yeah, we do. We have multi-cloud as well, and ours is probably a little more just because of the sheer volume and size, categorized and compartmentalized and how we tackle some of these things. But to a point Sarah made that I want to follow up on, anytime we have a new project in procurement, I don't care if it's SaaS, cloud, whatever, I think one of the biggest things that we've missed through the years is really truly sitting down with our customers and the end user to figure out what success looks like for them and really understand the project. That then is going to start getting us involved earlier and earlier and earlier in the discussions and in the projects numerous times. And one of them with a big cloud in a previous life again deal. I had one of the main project drivers ask me, why am I meeting with them so frequently? Because the previous purchasing person, they met like once in a 4-month deal. And I met with him 3 times in the first 2 weeks. And he's like, I don't understand. What are you doing here? So we need to be a lot more intentional, engaging early, and that will bring the wins, and they will start to communicate more with us and bring us in earlier. And I don't care what the platform is or what the solution is, but it's just one of the things that we need to change.
Yeah.
I would just like to add to that from when procurement's brought in on cloud purchases. We see it often that if there is a large section of the portfolio or a large project to move to cloud, that often if it's the initial engagement, procurement's brought in. And so they get the initial contract set up, they get all this done for the first time purchase. But what happens is at that point, IT kind of just takes over, and let's say the commitment is a $10 million commitment. Well, if they blow through that commitment, they don't go back and re-engage procurement to help them renegotiate or reopen that contract. So that's where we see the real slippery slope or the sneaky spin or the scope creep, is that procurement may be engaged on the initial purchase and the RFP to let's select a cloud vendor. But once that cloud vendor is selected, it just, it then becomes, it doesn't matter how much we spend with them. IT procurement may get re-engaged at the time of renewal, but it could be that they far exceed their commitment and they have opportunity for additional concessions well before the renewal date or expiration of the agreement.
Right.
Yeah, at NPI, we see over and over again exceeding the commitment by really orders of magnitude.
Oh, it's a 3-year contract, so it's put that in the folder for 3 years, and then 3 years revisit. But within a year, you've already blown through your commitments, and
Yeah. Okay. So we're getting some questions and kind of steering us towards the negotiation part of this. Let's start with Matt, and then we'll poll the rest of the group. You work with a wide variety of large enterprises in many industries. So what themes are you seeing as you work with them to get the best deal on these cloud purchases that we're involved in, purchases and renewals?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate everybody for making it through 20 minutes of this without talking about the AWS outage yesterday, and particularly Brad for not gloating. But as far as themes, again, what we see often, and it would reapply anytime there is a new application or new workload to migrate to the cloud, is all three of the primary suppliers of public cloud services, they pay a premium to help you get to their platform. So if you are moving something, there are all these migration credits that are available to clients to get up and running on the platform. And then outside of that, the rest of it is really a discount on their, what we call a cross-service discount, what AWS calls a enterprise discount program. That is based on the committed spend level. So those are the two primary drivers of where negotiations go. Is, are you moving new items to the cloud, and can we get some credits to help us get that done, make that migration? And then two, what are we willing to commit to? Outside of those two levers in the negotiation, there's a few other small ones, but those are the two primary ones. The rest of it becomes on more of cloud governance to control costs. That is, who's authorized to spin things up? Are you taking advantage of compute? Are you taking advantage of reserved instances, et cetera? But in the initial deal and in any contract negotiation, the two primary levers are committed spend and credits and incentives.
While you're not on mute, I'll ask a follow-up question for you. What about the RI? Usually, from what I've seen, RI is used as more of a prepay tool to get a steeper discount that a lot of people don't take advantage of. So I'm just curious how other companies that you've seen are handling that or utilizing that.
Yeah, so we do see a lot of RI. It's actually something, the most difficult way of using an RI is how it affects your spend, depending on whether you pay in advance or pay monthly, et cetera. Right. So you can use it in some ways to manage your committed spend. If you need to advance some of your committed spend and you know what your utilization is, you can buy, a bulk volume of RI to help offset your commitment, et cetera. We don't get, MPI doesn't really get engaged as much in the operational savings or the operational management, which would be more of, do I have 80% of my workloads requirement running on RIs and 20% is used for bursting, et cetera. That's kind of an industry accepted practice. And then you can do even more, using compute savings on AWS to to drive those savings even better or better manage that usage of resources.
Yeah, I think the prepay is an opportunity as we start becoming more and more embedded in these technologies. We know we're going to have a platform of spend as an opportunity to create some savings. But from what I've seen, the majority of the savings come from, paying attention to the governance. Are you using the right compute? Or are you right sized? Are you using the right? Is it just what's the term? Not reserved instance, but are you just using, do you need live data? Do you need it fast, or do you need, is it an archive file?
Is it on demand?
On demand,
Are you in the storage in the right place? Are you in Glacier storage, or which storage are you using, et cetera? Yeah.
And I know a couple of the panelists are IT guys, so I don't be offended, but the IT person typically likes the shiny, fastest object out there, and that's not always needed. So that's something that, to pay attention to for cost savings.
Well, what we've seen interesting in our last couple of engagements is the clients are, again, these are massive first-time buys, moving applications to the cloud. And so they've allowed the suppliers to come in, or they've essentially described or somehow sourced the workloads to them to go ahead and project what the list price is up front based on what the suppliers are saying the server requirements are and storage requirements, et cetera, and then show the discount and the actual cost to the client. We still find that to be a little bit of a black box that they, because it's so difficult to do apples to apples as to what size virtual machine on AWS is equivalent on Azure or Google. You find a virtual machine on AWS that has 16 virtual CPUs, but the similar box on Google now has twice the memory. So is it really equivalent, right? So it makes it very difficult to say, I'm going to run this workload on AWS on this virtual machine. What's that going to cost me versus what's it cost me on the other two, so that you actually understand what the underlying costs are and then can apply your discounts to see what your net cost is. That's still a challenging problem.
Yeah, this speaks right to a question we've gotten from Jeff. It seems with AWS, there's not upfront negotiation as much as managing the usage and pre-purchase of compute to garner savings. You need a full-time person managing usage, much like a broker playing the stock market. Are others seeing this as well? Sarah, you're nodding your head. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. That is what we've seen as well. When it comes to negotiation, all the big three negotiate very differently. And it's really important for us as procurement professionals to understand how they negotiate and where we can pull those levers that are appropriate to that specific platform. And all three, in my experience, operate very differently, and different things are important to them. Is it new load? Is it the marketplace? Is it, what exactly is important? Is it that you buy your service from them, or are they okay if you go to a third party? So doing that research, using advisory services, being involved with someone like Procurement Foundry, where you can ask other professionals, you need to understand what you are buying and what levers you can pull.
Yeah, what motivates them? One of the ways that the team, when we prepped for this, they characterized Google as nimble and flexible, AWS as structured and predictable, and Microsoft as a little bit of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To further answer Jeff's question, I would just say I would agree. I think we may move the needle in procurement on discounts and in credits and incentives, but by far the biggest savings comes from operational management, and that is, again, are you using reserved instances versus on-demand instances? Are you using the right level of storage? Are you spinning down servers at midnight when you aren't running applications on them, or are you leaving them up and running 24 hours a day regardless? Those are all things that have a much bigger impact on cost than what we can do on a contract optimization.
Yeah, and periodic formal house cleaning is an emerging discipline also. Because even if you think you've got it under control day to day, we're starting at NPI, we have some service offerings in this area, but we're seeing customers doing it on their own as well. Really having a formal, whether it's semi-annual or annual deep dive to tune it all up, and then you give it another year to get a little out of control again, and then you tune it all up because it really does get away from you. And this is the same on the SaaS side. Same phenomenon. Kind of like our own audits, the tables have turned. Instead of the software vendors auditing us to give us a bill for compliance issues, now they're happy to just give us everything we want to consume, and it's on us to audit ourselves and optimize. It's the opposite. Questions are, let me just try to get these in the right order because there's a couple of really good questions here. Multi-cloud was mentioned once. So here's a question. If you have an environment that includes more than one cloud provider, what are some good strategies to leverage the suppliers when adding new services to obtain competitive pricing and services? And let's also talk a little bit about, a multi-cloud strategy. Yeah, it sure sounds like a best practice, but in reality, how is it realistic? Can you be moving workloads easily between different suppliers once they're dedicated to a particular kind of use case or business need? Pavel, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely challenging to do that, right? So even though we might say we have a multi-cloud strategy, there's still primary reliance on AWS on our side. So it's the governance obviously is the key that we've talked about, making sure we manage that those environments smoothly, leveraging maybe partners to look at how do you manage the multi-cloud strategy. This might be something that you may want to consider. So what we found is, in the space of for instance, value-added resellers, there might be capabilities that some of our partners might have to assist with multi-cloud strategy, whether it's managing the reserved instances across multi-platforms or providing some other cost optimization services as a value add. So it's just something that we should think about as we try to address the challenge of multi-cloud strategy.
Okay, thank you.
I would say that we're seeing more and more that they are developing tools to make it hooks that make it easier to operate within a single supplier. And it's, they're just making it more difficult and more expensive if you want to try to run things on multiple multi-cloud environment.
Yeah.
I think there is also, just to maybe add there, I mean, there are certain instances or use cases where for instance, deploying a particular solution on Azure versus AWS makes more sense. So you use things, as you are involved in strategizing or developing a solution, that's kind of where you might see there's certain instances where going a different cloud provider makes more sense, right? So and that might be optimized based on a solution, and that could lead to better discounts or again maybe the more optimization on a certain application working better in AWS versus Azure or the other way around.
On a related note, one of our audience members is asking how important are data security criteria as you look at the different suppliers and weighting them. Anybody have any perspectives on that, or is it all pretty equal?
I'm very thankful for our information security department because they are the experts in that area. And believe me, at least at Allegis, they are watching, running up alerts as need be, and doing, of course, like annual reviews and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would agree. You don't want your sourcing guy making your technology decisions and or security decisions for that matter. So yeah, our parties and partners that we interact with are key in that area for sure.
Okay. Let's talk about marketplaces for a second. Are any of our panelists using AWS Marketplace? And of course, now all of the providers are developing marketplaces. And then probably a related point is this emerging, I don't know if it's a marketing speak or is it real, industry clouds. And it's a way that, Amazon just announced this last week that they're going to really focus on industry clouds. And I think Microsoft's kind of way ahead of them in that game. It just was kind of more natural for Microsoft. Has anybody used marketplaces in their business or used it as a way to leverage or increase commit or make a difference from the procurement perspective? Pavel,
So
have you guys?
we have started looking into the AWS marketplace, to your point, to try to help with commits. I think we're still in the phase of trying to understand the potential risks and the rewards. This is yet another procurement channel that our stakeholders are asking for, and managing them obviously requires a lot of flexibility and making sure that we have guardrails and governance put in place. So, from our perspective, it's still looking into it. Lack of control and management is a concern. Ability to leverage existing contract terms are, it's still kind of unclear or inconsistent, and spend reporting is lacking. That's kind of, for us, it's a challenge that we're watching. Obviously, we are looking at this point, we're looking at those online marketplaces on a situational basis, while we're trying to set up some of those initial guardrails, obtain feedback from our customers, and in the long term, develop and deploy that governance framework, which is probably not far away that we're from.
Yeah, we use some marketplace resources, I would say mostly on a smaller scale, through Azure and through AWS. I'm not sure if we use any through Google, but we have found them at times to be very helpful when we want to run like a proof of concept or something in a sandbox, because you can purchase, just that little small increment. Again, you're in a sandbox, so you're not using your live data. So that's a very interesting use case we have. We had a vendor, we wanted to go really full scale with that. But in that case, we wanted to negotiate that EULA. We wanted to have control. So I definitely see, and from procurement's view, we don't want just people going in there and buying anything from the marketplace and using anything they want, because we may not have the protections that we want in place contractually. But for those POCs in a sandbox, in this case, we did do a contract with the organization, and while the purchase is still flowing through the marketplace, we negotiated a better discount for the SaaS solution. It's a 3-year commitment, that sort of thing, but you definitely need those guardrails, and we watch it pretty closely. The other thing I'll mention is that in some of our contracts, it very specifically says that most marketplace purchases do not count toward your commit. So you need to, if you're thinking you're going to reach your commitment at the end of year 3, or however long your term is, by doing that marketplace purchase, read your contract carefully.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you can negotiate those. That's one of the things that I've seen other people or heard other people talk about. And it's probably one of the dangers too of the marketplace, is anybody can go out and just grab a contract and agree to a term or condition or whatever the case may be. But you can, and I encourage you to push back and negotiate those contracts just like you would any other contract, and then have the supplier put that into the marketplace portal for you to go in and pick and accept. That's critical. I mean, we really are not doing our job if we don't go in and make sure that we get our standard T's and C's even in the marketplace. So great point.
Thank you. One area that came up during our prep session was leveraging resellers to get better discounts. And I think a couple of you have perspectives on that. Pavel, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yes. So obviously, to stay competitive, I think VARs are looking at building new capabilities in the cloud space and building the partnerships. And value articulation and qualifying market value and differentiation still remains challenging and different for each of the organization. And how do you want to use a partner like, value-added resellers, right? It depends. What the value might be to you, it's not the same as it might be to another organization. But what we found is that, some of those partners might have strong partnerships with the cloud providers, with the likes of Microsoft and Google or AWS for that matter, where they can help with the cloud monitoring, metering, or cost management services, or perhaps because of their partnership, they're able to buy reserved instances at the discount. And as a result, they might be able to pass those discounts over to you. So there's definitely, again, it all depends on spend, it all depends on there's various factors that play in, but look at your partners, look at your value-added resource. They might have partnership that you might be able to utilize and can help you maybe even drive better discount levels than you could have done otherwise by yourself. So we've done some of the RFI capabilities assessment with our partners, whether it's existing and new, and see that those capabilities exist. So as we plan our 2022 strategy, we're definitely going to look at leveraging some of those in our strategy.
Sarah, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, so I mean, a VAR is a very good idea in many cases and should not go unexplored. Everyone knows Microsoft. You're not going to actually sign a piece of paper that a Microsoft rep is going to send you. You're going to work through a VAR, even though in our case, we're still purchasing directly from Microsoft. But, there are other cloud vendors who actually prefer you may go through a VAR. You may get a discount for doing that. You may be able to get some free support. They can be very valuable while you're making your cloud journey. They may be willing to do a lot of the research, crunch the numbers, and all of that. And a lot of that is done because they're being paid a fee, whether it be by one of the cloud providers or by you. But a lot of times there are some things you can really take advantage of, especially if you have a VAR you work really well with, perhaps on other projects that you trust, who's going to give you some good advice based on their experience and not just because they're going to be paid. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But we've been researching this area and are finding out some very interesting things. So again, understand your vendors and the levers and, investigate all of the options. And at times, just because you've signed direct with the company, the cloud provider, sometimes you can switch that to a reseller and there are no repercussions and that sort of thing. So investigate your options.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, one thing that you wanted to talk about was support, as the support aspect of this and thinking that through. What do you want to share with our audience on that subject?
Yes, I mean, I've negotiated a lot of our support agreements here, and generally they're a percentage of what you're spending with that cloud provider, sometimes a base fee and then a percentage. But, so you need to understand what your spend is going to be and make sure your finance team is well informed on what that support is going to cost. So you may be getting X percentage off by making a commit. What does that do to your support that you're going to sign, and how do you leverage all of this spend? So your support spend, your cloud spend, in the case of Microsoft, like your EA, and taking all of that into account and making sure that when you're going to the table with any of these vendors, you understand your full company-wide spend on all of the components and can really use that. But you have to look at support. It could be through a VAR, as we were discussing. It could be through a completely separate third party, and there are risks there you want to investigate very closely, or it could be through the cloud provider itself. But I mean, if you have critical production load running on any of these suites, you need to make sure you have support and someone, managing those SLAs, making sure you get credits when AWS has an outage, all of that good stuff as well.
Thank you.
Like yesterday. Oh,
Like yesterday, yes, of course. So Kim, I would just add in what we're seeing, I'd actually absolutely agree with everything that Pavel and Sarah said about VARs or buying through third parties. We have not really seen a dramatic difference, if any difference at all, between, for example, if you make a commitment, the cross-service discount or service-specific discounts or credits that you get, either direct or through a VAR. I think the difference really is in the maturity of your organization to be able to know how to plan to move to the cloud, the cost of those professional services, the cost of that ongoing management. I think if you go through a VAR, a lot of times there is a lot more of the cost optimization that can happen than if you just don't have those skills in-house, right? So that's one, and none of the suppliers are going to help you with that. They want you to consume as much as you consume, and they're not going to point out areas to save. But if you have a VAR involved, that's often what their whole purpose is to help you manage reserved instances versus on-demand instances and storage and all of that. So that's the real value that we see in engaging with a VAR, is helping you plan that journey, as Sarah said, and then helping you manage your presence in the cloud.
Thanks. Thank you. I don't know if this will be helpful or not, but let's just give it a whirl. Kind of go around the panel. And as you think about where you are today and how much workload is still running on-prem or in your own captive of private data centers versus cloud, how is this going to change over the next 5 years? Like what percentage of your operations are not yet at the cloud, and how much growth do you see in your spend, and kind of what's driving that? Is it analytics? Is it new stuff that you're doing, or is it really this migration from on-premise to cloud? I'll start with Brad, because in our prep session, you talked about how you guys are still contrasting the cost of your own data centers with cloud as part of your planning process. So obviously you still have a lot of stuff in your own data centers.
Oh,
what
yeah.
does that look like? And what does
Yeah,
the
for
future look like?
Yeah, for sure. And like we were talking about, I have yet in any of my current and or previous engagements, I've been able to model out that the cloud is actually cheaper. I know Microsoft on their Azure website, I do believe they have a statement that says something like, moving to the Azure cloud will save you money, blah, 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 blah. I'm not buying that totally. I mean, I know it's hard to believe that they would have false advertising, but I think a lot of it depends on the maturity and the support in the IT group, right? We do have a lot of on-prem. We have our own on-prem cloud. But I cannot, the advantages are not in pure costs. And I think Matt could probably talk to it better, right? It's the support, it's the equipment refresh, it's all of the other things, the uptimes, all the, the exposure to some of the non-tangibles maybe is really where we're seeing the value, is not a pure play as far as savings goes, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Pavel, what about your perspective?
I would agree with Brad. I mean, it's gonna still take for us years, I would say, to move. While we're trying to be aggressive and we have the cloud first strategy, there's a lot of equipment that's in the data center. There's a lot of proprietary, perhaps, software and hardware that it takes a while to migrate. So it's a long-term journey. And why we're trying to be aggressive, it's a journey that we're trying to plan thoroughly and thoughtfully. And I think, to my earlier point, is having the partnership with the cloud team kind of helps us be along that journey and plan it specifically around our renewals, right, and strategy there and other procurement aspects. So tough to say that how long it's going to take, but it's definitely a long-term journey.
Well, they predicted the mainframe would be dead. I think it was about 10 years ago, and it's still alive and well. So
that's a sore subject. Just to follow up a little bit, I mean, it's interesting. We all know the technology costs are going down every year, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a race to determine if the technology costs for our internal operations are going to slow up. And if there's enough competitive advantage to the mass quantities of everything that the three main cloud providers buy, can they decrease their costs in the future faster than what we can, keeping it, internally? So that's going to be an interesting race to sit back and watch, is to see how the decreases work out. But don't sign a long-term contract too long, because everything keeps dropping.
Kim, I really don't have time to go into it, but we've got probably 3 case studies or engagements that we worked on recently that, kind of play this whole scenario out. One was where it was actually a third party. I don't remember whether it was Rackspace or somebody similar in that environment, that was essentially running a private cloud for a company. And in that private cloud, it was very transparent. Hey, we need to go out and buy and refresh this set of servers. This is what it's going to cost you for us to get these into your private cloud and manage them over this life cycle. So it was true life cycle management. And that private cloud was, as I indicated before, was handling about 80% of what this customer's requirements were for compute. And Rackspace, or again, whoever it was basically building in to be able to go to the cloud and actually multi-cloud for those bursting when they were above capacity. And it seemed like, just from a cost basis, a very, very cost-effective way of running it rather than putting everything in the cloud. Compared to that, we've got a client that just recently engaged with AWS. They had been an AWS customer. They renewed for $100 million a year, all in. In this case, the senior IT management in each line of business, as well as the CIO, is sharing their strategic vision with AWS. This is what we want to go do. And, soliciting, how do you help us do this? Now, at the same time, they're still trying to look and sharing some of that vision with the other cloud suppliers to try to keep some competitiveness in there. But that would be one of the examples of what you referenced, an industry cloud where it's a large manufacturer. AWS is trying to capture and build things, everything that this manufacturer needs to run their business from an IT standpoint. And then we're seeing others where it is in pharmaceutical. They may be it's complete green field build out of a new product or new service that they are going to deliver, and it's all being done on the cloud, and it never started out in a data center. So
interesting. Thank you. Sarah, what about you?
I would say we're still fairly early in our journey. It's not going to happen overnight. We're trying to do it in a way that makes sense. What are you doing with new? Are you putting new on your servers? Are you putting it in the cloud? Do you have what are your internal controls and decisions on that? We're making sure we have a governance in place. We have meetings every few weeks, trying to make sure we are really ready for this. How are the approvals given? How is it decided which cloud to put things in? I think you can begin to put things in the cloud, but you need to make sure you understand what you're doing, because it's not as easy to just move things around. It's not like just moving it from one server to another. So I think you have to be cautious, but it's going to take years. If you have any amount of data, and if you have 20 and 30 years of data you're wanting to move, you need to understand those costs and what you need to keep, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we have a question. It kind of goes back to risk management. Given the occurrence of the massive AWS outage, what are the contingency plans that your sourcing organizations have in place or are considering for 2022? Is that becoming, as your businesses become more dependent on this third-party data center, becoming more front and center from a procurement perspective to build in risk management, stronger risk management?
I think that's much, much more of an IT question on how to do that. It is so challenging, given that an application is tied to an IP address, and that IP address is pointed at an AWS. That when an AWS has an outage, and you have to repoint that or have multi DNS mitigation. The challenge of running that same application in another cloud supplier and being able to get the IP addresses propagated. Again, it's well beyond my level of technical expertise, but I think there are a lot of challenges in truly trying to run some sort of a standby operation in the event of an outage. Again, it's just not our space, but.
Yeah, and it'll be, the suppliers will get better and better because they really will be the data center for all of us as we play this out over the next 20 years. It's just as it's always been a big part of the equation. We're just moving where that equation is managed and taken care of. Well, we're down to 5 minutes left, and at the end of our session, every time we like to go around our panel and just ask them, if they have one takeaway to share with our audience about this subject, what would that be? So let's start with you, Pavel.
Yeah, so I would say the key for us is really build that partnership with your stakeholders and stay involved with them along the way. And then from the procurement perspective, leverage all the partnerships that you might have with the suppliers to help us with the strategy. And as a procurement professionals, we have the view of the entire enterprise kind of relationship that we might have with the supplier. So bringing that over to your stakeholders and helping them to me, it's a key for us to work closely together and add value to our organization.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Brad, what would you like to leave everybody with?
Well, I think, and I thought I saw a question from Larry. So where he asked, is it IT or is it procurement monitoring? It's IT. I didn't see him on the list, but I know Larry, and yeah, for sure, IT has to be the one to manage the move loads, to understand, how we're consuming and spending our dollars in this area. Get engaged early and be a great partner. That's going to be the best chance we have of getting that information. If you can get in the roadmap meetings, get in the roadmap meetings.
Okay, thank you. And we talked as we were getting ready and doing all of our testing for this session, you mentioned you've got a book about to drop.
I do.
Do you want to give a little plug before we move on to Sarah?
Sure. Hopefully it's done. It went through its final editing and proofing and all that. So it's really exciting. It comes out, I try and show a picture, but I really don't know how to do that. It comes out probably in a week, at most 2 weeks. It'll be available to the masses on Amazon.
What's it called? And what's it about?
Maybe if they're up and running.
Yeah, the title is Software. The hidden time bomb, or the dang gummit, now I'm too flustered. It's all about software sourcing and how we got here. I mean, it's really a mess how we got here. We relied on our suppliers far too much in the beginning because we didn't know any better. It's the hidden costs and fixing that and getting it right, and what we can do as a group. Right, we all have to bond together and fight this fight together. Otherwise, we'll never make it. But yes, it's all about software sourcing. There's some cloud references in there as well and things like that. But I appreciate the mention.
So once it comes out, let me know. We'll put it on the NPI channel. Tell everybody how to get it.
Absolutely, we'll do that, because I just want to break even on this dang thing. I had no idea how much it costs to write a book.
Sarah, what would you like to leave the group with?
Yeah, and if you're still here 58 minutes into this, and I'm speaking to my people with this, but it is how you as a procurement professional can make an impact. Do your research, learn your category, learn what you're interested in. If you're interested in moving to the cloud category and you don't have any experience in it, you're attending this for a reason. You want to learn. Do your research, use your advisors, talk to people with experience. Our technical teams, I know, are happy for me to just put 15 minutes on the calendar and bombard them with questions and understand things, even if they're outside of procurement purview. So do your research, and this can be a very successful category that I believe somebody could sit in for 20 or more years.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Really good thing to think about. And Matt, finally, Matt, I think you win for most gorgeous background.
Oh.
It's real, right?
It is real. I'm sitting here. I'm actually joining you from what is it, Pacific Grove, just north of Pebble Beach. I'm in a
Nice.
YWCA conference center. So yeah, it's gorgeous
It's
here.
beautiful, very festive.
Yeah.
So what would you like to leave our group with?
It really is to understand your requirements and your spend forecast, and that's really hard to nail down. It is working with your IT partners to try and get them to understand and document their requirements so that you can go to your suppliers with a very crisp demand set and have a much more clear picture of what you want in return for that demand set. And that is real key to this. And then, just that division of what I think most procurement experts know is that, the responsibility is IT is around selection. They're selecting around IT, but even if they've selected something, they've got to know how to message that in order to continue to get the concessions that they're looking for. So it is that procurement's responsible for messaging and how to get this out and how to get the requirements, but they're responsible for developing the requirements. So
Yeah, I think you characterized it in our prep session as you have to craft the ask, and there's an art and a science to that.
Yep.
And this is such a huge investment and such an important relationship that you have to pay attention to those details. Well, thank you all very much. It was great. Thank you for your time. Thank you to our audience. And it's time of year to wish everybody happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Hope you all are healthy and happy. And thanks very much for joining us today. We look forward to talking to you at our next Topics in Technology, which will be January, February timeframe. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Bye, everyone.
bye.